Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is the Eye. I don't just tell stories. I observe. I analyze. I look where most people refuse to look. On this channel, we dissect the psychology behind real crimes. Not for spectacle, not for cheap shock, but to understand how darkness forms inside an ordinary human mind. Tonight, we're turning our attention to one of the most disturbing cases in modern history. Before the headlines, before the courtroom cameras, before the world knew the name, there was a quiet man living a quiet life. Soft-spoken, withdrawn, forgettable, and that is what makes this case so unsettling. Jeffrey Dahmer did not look like a monster. He looked invisible. No dramatic outbursts, no theatrical rage, just isolation growing, fantasy escalating, control becoming obsession. How does someone cross that psychological threshold? When does imagination stop being thought and start becoming action? How does loneliness mutate into something predatory? Tonight, we are not just examining crimes. We are stepping inside a fractured mind. And by the end of this video, you may realize something deeply uncomfortable. The most dangerous people are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are the quietest. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. On the surface, his childhood didn't look catastrophic. His father was a chemist. His mother struggled with mental instability and heavy medication use. The house wasn't physically violent, it was emotionally fractured. Cold arguments, distance, silence that stretched too long. And silence is dangerous, because when a child grows up feeling unseen, the mind begins building its own world. From an early age, Dahmer showed extreme social withdrawal. He struggled to connect. He felt different, isolated, invisible. While other kids formed identities through friendships, he retreated inward. Then came the fascination with dead animals. Not simple curiosity, not childhood shock value. He collected roadkill, dissected carcasses, preserved bones. He once said he was interested in how things were put together. But psychologically, there's something deeper there. Dead things don't reject you. Dead things don't leave you. Dead things don't judge you. Control without resistance. As adolescence intensified, so did his fantasies. They weren't explosive or chaotic. They were quiet, structured, repetitive. He began imagining total possession of another human being. Not companionship, ownership. Alcohol entered the picture heavily in high school. Not social drinking, compulsive drinking. He drank before class, during class, after class. Teachers noticed. Students laughed it off as strange behavior. But alcohol wasn't the root. It was lubrication for something darker forming underneath. In 1978, just weeks after graduation, his parents had divorced. The family home was empty. No supervision, no structure, just him, and whatever had been growing in his mind for years. He picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They drank. They talked. It seemed ordinary. When Hicks said he needed to leave, something snapped, not in rage, but in panic. Abandonment. Dahmer struck him with a dumbbell and strangled him. The psychological threshold had been crossed. Most people, after committing such an act, would spiral into horror, guilt, collapse. Dahmer later described feeling calm. That calm is chilling. It meant the internal barrier was weaker than anyone imagined. He dismembered the body, experimented with dissolving flesh in acid, crushed bones, scattered remains behind the house. Then he went on living. Nearly a decade passed before the next murder. But the fantasies didn't stop. They evolved. He joined the army briefly, was discharged for alcohol abuse, drifted through low-level jobs, returned to Milwaukee. Outwardly unstable, but not visibly violent. Internally, the obsession refined itself. By 1987, the killings resumed. He began targeting young men, often vulnerable, often from marginalized communities. He approached them in malls, bus stops, bars. He offered money for photographs, or just drinks. Inside his apartment, the ritual unfolded with precision. Alcohol, isolation, sedatives. He drugged his victims to make them unconscious. Because he did not want to fight. He wanted stillness, submission without resistance. And here the psychology becomes even more disturbing. Dahmer didn't just want to kill. He wanted permanence. He attempted crude lobotomies, drilling into victims' skulls and injecting acid or boiling water. He was trying to create what he described as a zombie, someone alive but unable to leave, unable to think independently, not pain for pleasure, control for security. He was trying to eliminate abandonment at the neurological level. Think about that. He was attempting to surgically remove another person's autonomy. His apartment became a physical extension of his fractured mind. Polaroids documenting bodies in staged positions, skulls cleaned and stored, a blue barrel filled with acid-dissolving remains, a refrigerator containing human parts, and yet neighbors mostly complained about a smell. That's how evil sometimes operates. Not loudly, but gradually. In July 1991, one intended victim, Tracy Edwards, managed to survive. He was handcuffed but conscious. He convinced Dahmer to let him use the bathroom. He ran, flagged down police. When officers entered the apartment, they saw Polaroids in a drawer, images of dismembered bodies. In seconds, everything collapsed. Dahmer didn't resist arrest. He confessed calmly. 17 murders. 17. During psychiatric evaluations, he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, schizotypal traits, and severe paraphilic disorders. But he was ruled legally sane. He knew what he was doing. He simply did not experience empathy in a way that stopped him. In court, he appeared soft-spoken, detached. He claimed remorse, but even his remorse sounded clinical, as if he were describing a laboratory experiment that went too far. Was it guilt, or awareness that he had finally been caught? Experts still debate it. In 1994, while serving multiple life sentences, Dahmer was beaten to death by another inmate. But his death didn't end the psychological discussion. It intensified it, because his crimes force a disturbing realization. Extreme violence does not always come from explosive hatred. Sometimes it grows from emptiness, loneliness unexamined, fantasies unchecked. Empathy slowly eroded. He didn't kill for money. He didn't kill for fame. He didn't kill out of uncontrollable rage. He killed because he wanted absolute control over his fear of being alone. That is what makes this case uniquely unsettling. The root wasn't chaos. It was emotional vacancy. And vacancy, when combined with obsession and isolation, can become catastrophic. The warning signs were there. Chronic alcoholism, social isolation, fixation on death, inability to form healthy attachments. None of these alone create a killer, but layered together, untreated, ignored, dismissed as just strange, they can distort a mind gradually. And when empathy dissolves, other people stop being people. They become objects. And once someone becomes an object, there are no moral breaks left. This wasn't a theatrical villain. It was a quiet man who learned to disconnect so completely that human life became material. And that may be the most disturbing truth of all, because it suggests the line between ordinary and unthinkable is thinner than we would ever like to admit. What makes this case linger in the mind isn't just the brutality. It's the emptiness behind it. Jeffrey Dahmer did not operate in chaos. He operated in quiet, in routine, in invisibility. And that's the part that unsettles people the most. Evil didn't explode, it accumulated, layer by layer, fantasy by fantasy, boundary by boundary, until there were no boundaries left. This case forces an uncomfortable truth. Darkness doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it grows in isolation, in untreated obsession, in the slow erosion of empathy. And here's the lesson. Neglected loneliness can rot. Unchecked fantasy can escalate. Silence can become permission. The human mind is not fragile, it's powerful. Powerful enough to create meaning. Powerful enough to justify destruction. What you feed it matters. What you ignore matters even more. Monsters are rarely cinematic. They are often unnoticed. If this story made you think, not just react, then this channel is for you. Subscribe and step deeper into the psychology behind the headlines. And if you have a story, an experience, a perspective you've never shared, send it in. If you have the courage, because understanding darkness isn't about glorifying it. It's about recognizing it before it takes form. Remember this, evil doesn't begin with violence. It begins with permission.